Jessica Marten had spent the last 4 months of her life doing 3 things: working double shifts at Harlow's fine dining, pretending she was absolutely fine and avoiding the texts, calls, and uninvited visits from her ex-boyfriend, Derek Walsh. It was a Tuesday evening when Derek walked into Harlow's for the 3rd time that week. Jessica spotted him the moment he pushed through the glass door, wearing that same gray coat she used to love and that same smile she now found exhausting. She pressed her back against the kitchen wall and whispered to her coworker, "Gina, he is here again. Tell me this is a nightmare." Gina Flores popped her head around the kitchen door and immediately pulled it back with wide eyes. "Honey, that is definitely not a nightmare. That is a walking problem in a gray coat. Do you want me to tell him you are sick?" Jessica closed her eyes for 1 second, breathed, and straightened her back. "No," she said quietly. "I am not hiding in my own workplace anymore." She walked out to the floor with her order pad, and Derek immediately raised his hand like a man waving down a taxi he knew would stop for him. He had that confidence that came not from kindness, but from years of people letting him get away with things. His dark hair was neat, his jaw was clean-shaved, and his eyes carried that familiar look that once made Jessica's heart move, but now only made her tired. "Jessica," he said smoothly as she stopped in front of his table. "You look great tonight. What can I get for you, Derek?" Her voice was flat and professional. He tilted his head slightly. "Can we talk? Just for 5 minutes. I have been thinking about us a lot lately, and I really believe we ended things too quickly." Jessica held the pen over her notepad and looked at him steadily. "Derek, we ended things because you lied to me twice, forgot my birthday, and told me I was too sensitive when I cried about it. That is not too quickly. That is actually a little late." His jaw tightened slightly, but the smile stayed. "You are angry." "I understand that I am not angry," she corrected him calmly. "I am working. Can I take your order? Or would you prefer another table?" He ordered coffee, and she walked back to the kitchen where Gina was already bouncing on her toes, waiting for a report. Jessica said nothing. She just exhaled the kind of exhausted breath that carries months of frustration in it. Later that night, when her shift ended, Jessica sat on the bench outside the restaurant with her coat pulled tight against the November air. Her phone buzzed. She expected another message from Derek. Instead, it was a message from Brandon Cole. "Still at work? Bring leftover bread if they have any. I am outside." She looked up, and there he was, leaning against his dark blue truck parked across the street with his hands in his jacket pockets. Brandon was the kind of man who showed up without being asked, which was both his greatest quality and the reason Jessica sometimes felt things around him that she quickly decided not to examine too closely. She crossed the street, and he handed her a coffee cup. "Still warm?" He bought it from the cart on the corner, the way he always did when he knew she had a long shift. He came again. She said, "Not a question." Brandon nodded once. "Gina texted me." Of course she did. Jessica took a sip of the coffee. "He wants to talk about us." "He always wants to talk about us. Like us is a thing that still exists somewhere, and it's just misplaced it." Brandon looked at her with those calm brown eyes that never seemed rushed. "What did you say to him?" "I took his order like a professional and gave him the decaf without telling him," she said. Brandon laughed. "That is honestly perfect." They walked to his truck and drove without a destination for a while, which was something they had been doing since they were 19 years old. Back then, they were both broke college students in Chicago, and driving around the city at night with music low was the cheapest, best therapy either of them had ever found. 12 years later, it still worked the same way. "He does not respect the word no," Jessica said after a few minutes. "I have said it clearly, calmly, loudly, and in a text message with perfect punctuation. He just does not hear it." Brandon drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. His eyes were on the road, but his voice shifted to something more thoughtful. "Has he ever backed off when he thought something was in his way?" Jessica thought about it. "Once," she said slowly. "When he thought I was interested in someone from my photography class, he stopped calling for 2 whole weeks. It was the most peaceful 2 weeks of my life." Brandon was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled into the parking lot of a small 24-hour diner they both knew well and cut the engine. He turned to look at her, and there was something careful and deliberate in his expression. Jess, what if he thought someone was in the way right now? She raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Brandon leaned back in his seat and looked at the diner sign for a moment before looking back at her. I mean, what if he thought you were with someone? Not just interested in someone, actually with someone. In a relationship. Jessica stared at him. You want me to invent a fake boyfriend? Not invent, it said. I am right here. The silence in the truck was the kind that feels alive. Jessica looked at Brandon and tried to figure out if he was joking. He was not smiling the way he did when he was joking. He was looking at her with that steady, patient look that she had seen him use when he was completely serious about something. Brandon, she said carefully, you are my best friend. I know we have been best friends for 12 years. I am aware of the timeline. Yes, this would be complicated. He nodded slowly, probably. And when Derek finally leaves me alone, and this is over, you and I would go back to normal, like nothing happened. Something moved across his face very quickly, too quickly for her to read it clearly. Then he nodded again. If that is what you want, yes. Jessica looked out the window at the Chicago street, where a couple was walking past, holding hands and laughing at something. She thought about Derek showing up at her job again tomorrow, and the day after that. She thought about the violets he had sent to her apartment last week, with a card that said some things deserve a second chance. She thought about how tired she was of feeling watched and chased and not listened to. She looked back at Brandon. There would have to be rules, she said. He pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app. Without blinking. Obviously, go ahead. She almost laughed at that. No real kissing. Just photos and public appearances noted. No overnight visits. If someone asks, we just say we value our privacy. Noted. And this ends the moment. Derek stops. Brandon typed it without looking up. Then he set the phone down and looked at her with those eyes that she had known for 12 years and somehow never fully figured out. Deal they went inside the diner and ordered pancakes, and Jessica told herself she was doing a very smart and practical thing. She told herself this was simply a problem being solved between two adults who trusted each other. She told herself that the warm feeling spreading through her chest when Brandon reached across the table and said, "So, partner," was just gratitude. She mostly believed it the first. Photo they posted was Brandon's idea. It was a Saturday afternoon and the winter. Sun was doing that rare Chicago thing where it actually showed up and made everything look golden and worth photographing. They were in Millennium Park, standing near the Bean, and Jessica had her camera bag over one shoulder. Brandon stood beside her and said casually, like it was nothing, "Take a selfie with me." She looked at him. "Right now?" "Right now," he said, natural. No posing. "Just us." She held up her phone and he leaned in close, his cheek nearly touching hers. And he said something quietly that made her laugh genuinely, just as she hit the button. The photo was warm and easy and real looking because it was real in every way except the label they were putting on it. Brandon posted it to his Instagram that evening with a simple caption, "Some people make every place better." Jessica stared at her phone screen for a full minute after seeing it. Then her phone started buzzing. Gina called before the notifications even had time to stack up properly. Jessica Marie Marten. Gina's voice came through sharp and full of energy. "Is that what I think it is? Are you and Brandon Cole finally a thing? Because I have been saying this for 2 years and nobody listened to me, and I deserve an apology. We are taking things slow," Jessica said carefully, using the line she and Brandon had agreed on. Taking things slow. Gina repeated the words slowly like she was tasting each one. "You two have been best friends for over a decade. How much slower could you possibly go? Were you planning to confess feelings at age 70 from side-by-side rocking chairs?" Jessica smiled despite herself. "Goodbye, Gina." She hung up and immediately called Brandon. Gina already knows. I expected that. His voice was calm, and she could hear road noise in the background. He was probably driving home from a site visit. "Owen called me too. He said it was about time and then made a noise I can only describe as a victory screech. His younger brother, Owen, had always been dramatic about the two of them. Jessica had heard Owen say at least a dozen times over the years that he was going to personally lock them in a room together until they figured out what everyone else could already see. She had always laughed it off. She laughed it off now, too. She told herself it was easy to laugh off. The following week moved quickly and strangely. They had coffee together at her favorite place on Tuesday, the way they always did. But now Gina had somehow already called ahead and told the owner, sweet older man named Mr. Halpern, and he brought them a small complimentary dessert with a paper napkin note that read, "Congratulations, young love." Brandon looked at it and then looked at Jessica, and they both pressed their lips together, trying not to laugh, which made Mr. Halpern beam with satisfaction. On Wednesday, Derek showed up at Harlow's again, but this time something was different. He sat down and pulled out his phone, and Jessica could see from across the room that he was looking at Brandon's Instagram post. When she came to his table, his whole energy was different, quieter, less comfortable. "Is that Brandon Cole?" he asked, his voice trying to stay neutral and not quite managing it. Jessica looked at the phone screen like she was confirming something obvious. "Yes, you are dating." "Brandon Cole?" He said it slowly. "We are, yes," she said, and then took his order without offering anything more. Derek left after one coffee and did not linger by the door. He did not send a message that night. He did not send one the next morning either. Jessica woke up on Thursday to the quietest phone she had seen in 4 months and stood in her kitchen in her socks drinking orange juice, feeling something she almost did not recognize at first. Peace. Actual, quiet, peaceful morning peace. She texted Brandon. "It is working." His reply came back in less than a minute. "Told you. Also, Owen wants to take us both to dinner to celebrate." I said no 3 times, and he stopped listening after the first one. They went to dinner with Owen on Friday, and Jessica quickly understood why. Brandon had tried to say no. Owen Cole was 26 years old, enthusiastic about everything, and had zero understanding of subtlety. He arrived at the restaurant already talking, ordered for himself before they sat down, and spent the first 10 minutes of the meal looking between the two of them with the expression of a man watching his favorite movie finally reach the good part. "So," Owen said, leaning forward with his elbows on the table, "how did it happen? I want every detail, chronologically." Brandon gave his brother a look. "Owen, what?" "I am being supportive." Owen turned to Jessica. "Was it romantic? Did he finally do something?" "Romantic, because I have been telling him for years that he needs to be more expressive, and he never listens to me." Jessica glanced at Brandon, who was rubbing the back of his neck with the particular patience of a man who had been managing his younger brother's personality since childhood. "It happened naturally," she said simply. "Sometimes things just shift." Owen pointed at her. "That is the most beautifully vague answer I have ever heard, and I respect it deeply." He raised his water glass. "To both of you." "Took long enough." Brandon clinked his glass against Owen's with a tight smile. "Thank you, Owen." The dinner was genuinely fun despite everything. Owen made them both laugh until Jessica's cheeks hurt. He told embarrassing stories about Brandon from their childhood with complete joy and no remorse. Brandon sat next to Jessica the whole evening, and at some point his arm went along the back of her chair without ceremony, without announcement, just comfortably there. And Jessica found she did not move away from it. She found she leaned into it slightly. When Owen went to the restroom, Brandon leaned close and said quietly, "You doing okay?" And the warmth of his voice near her ear made something flutter in her chest in a way she categorized quickly and firmly as the effect of a nice dinner in good company. "Fine," she said. "Your brother is wonderful. He is exhausting," Brandon said fondly. "He loves you," Jessica said. Brandon looked at her for a moment with that expression she could never fully read and said, "Yeah, he does." Then Owen came back, and the moment passed. The complication came the following weekend in the form of Haley Ross. Haley was Brandon's business partner at Cole Construction. sharp and organized, and clearly someone who had spent considerable time being more than professionally interested in Brandon. Jessica had met her twice before and always found her perfectly polite in the way that required considerable effort. Haley saw the Instagram post and called Brandon. Brandon told Jessica about it simply. She said she was surprised. I told her we had been building toward this for a while. She went quiet for a bit and then said she hoped it did not complicate the business. Does it? Jessica asked. Brandon looked at her steadily. No, but there was a company dinner 2 days later that Haley organized and Brandon brought Jessica. And the whole evening had a tension underneath it that Jessica felt in her shoulders all night. Haley was gracious and correct in every external way, but her eyes followed Brandon constantly, and twice she said things too. Jessica that were polite on the surface and something else underneath. Things like, Brandon has always been so dedicated to his work. It is nice he is finally making time for other things, and I have known him a long time, so I know how important his independence is to him. On the drive home, Jessica was quiet. Brandon noticed immediately. He always noticed. What did she say to you? It was not one thing. Jessica looked out the passenger window at the night city moving past. She just made me feel like I was a visitor in something that belonged to someone else. Brandon's hands tightened on the wheel slightly. You are not a visitor, Jess. She turned to look at him. We are pretending, Brandon. He kept his eyes on the road. I know what we are doing. The words sat between them with more weight than either of them acknowledged. Jessica turned back to the window. That night, lying in her apartment, she thought about the dinner and about Haley's careful eyes on Brandon and about the fact that the thing, growing warm and complicated in her own chest, was becoming harder to explain away with nice dinners and good company. She thought about the rules they had written down so carefully. No real kissing. Ends when Derek stops. Derek had been quiet for 6 days. By the rules of their agreement, this could be nearly over, and Jessica lay in the dark, realizing she did not know what to do with the feeling that arrived with that thought. It was not relief. It was something that sat much heavier than relief and felt uncomfortably close to loss. Her phone lit up. A text from Brandon. You awake? She typed back, yes. 3 seconds later, me too. She stared at the ceiling of her apartment for a long time after that, her phone resting on her chest, and did not text back anything more, and neither did he. But neither of them slept easily either. 3 more days passed, and Derek Walsh did not send a single message. Jessica checked her phone each morning with the same cautious feeling a person has when they stop hearing a noise that has been bothering them for so long that the silence itself feels suspicious. But the silence held. No texts. No flowers delivered to the restaurant. No gray coat appearing at Harlow's door during the dinner rush. Nothing. It should have felt like a finish line. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something she was not ready to step back from. She was restocking the condiment trays at Harlow's on a slow Wednesday afternoon when Gina appeared beside her with the particular expression she wore when she had been thinking about something for too long and could no longer contain it. Can I say something without you telling me to mind my own business? Gina said. You are going to say it regardless, so go ahead. Jessica replied without looking up. Gina leaned against the counter. I have watched you for the past 2 weeks and you look different. Not happy, different like a person who solved a problem. More like happy, different in a way that scares you. Like you found something you were not looking for, and now you do not know what to do with it. Jessica set down the tray. She was holding and looked at her coworker. Gina, I am not finished. Gina held up one finger. That man came into this restaurant 3 times last week, not because Derek was watching, not because anyone was watching, just because he wanted to sit in your section and drink bad coffee and watch you work. And every time you walked past his table, your whole face did something it does not do for anyone else. Jessica opened her mouth. I am still not finished, Gina said calmly. Derek is gone, honey. Has been for days. Whatever reason you two started this thing, that reason is done. And you are still holding on, and so is he, and I think you both know exactly why." Jessica looked at the condiment tray for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "What if I ruined it by making it something fake, when it should have been something real?" Gina put a hand on her shoulder. "Then you unruin it," she said simply. "That is what brave people do." Jessica thought about that. For the rest of her shift, Brandon picked her up that evening because they had plans to go to Owen's apartment for a casual dinner. A small group of people. Nothing formal. She was ready when he knocked, and when she opened the door, he was standing there in a dark green jacket she had not seen before, and for one moment, she just looked at him the way she had apparently been looking at him without realizing it for longer than she wanted to admit. "You look nice," she said. He looked at her with that warm, steady expression. "So do you." He paused. "You okay?" She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door. "I will be," she said, which was true. Owen's apartment was small and full of people talking over each other in the comfortable way of people who knew each other well. Owen greeted them at the door with enormous enthusiasm and immediately pulled Brandon into a conversation about a football game, while Jessica found a spot near the kitchen where a woman named Claire, one of Owen's friends, was pouring wine and happy to chat. The evening moved easily. Jessica laughed at Owen's stories and helped clear plates and talk to people she liked. Brandon moved through the room with that natural ease he had always carried, and every so often she would look up and find him already looking at her from across the room with a look he tucked away quickly. When their eyes met, she stopped tucking hers away. She let him see it. The second time it happened, Brandon went still for just a moment, like a man who had heard something he wanted to be sure he heard correctly. Then a slow and careful and very real smile came to his face, and Jessica felt her heart do something large and honest in her chest. Later in the evening, Owen pulled out a board game that nobody had asked for, and the living room rearranged itself into teams. Jessica ended up beside Brandon on the small couch, and their arms pressed together, and neither of them shifted to create space. At some point, his hand rested on his knee, and her hand rested beside it, and their fingers were barely touching, and neither of them moved, and Jessica was fairly certain she did not hear a single word of the game for the next 20 minutes. When they left, it was late and cold outside, and their breath made small clouds in the air. They walked to Brandon's truck, and he unlocked it, but neither of them got in immediately. They stood on the sidewalk under a streetlight, and Chicago was doing its beautiful nighttime thing around them. All lit windows and distant traffic, and the kind of cold air that makes everything feel sharper and more honest. Brandon spoke first. He looked at the street, and then at her. "Jess, Derek has been quiet for over a week." She nodded. "I know he is not coming back," Brandon said carefully. "I think he finally got the message." She nodded again. "I think so too." He looked at her directly then. "Which means by the rules we made, this is over." The word "over" sat in the cold air between them, and Jessica watched Brandon's face while he said it. He was keeping his expression very composed and steady, and she had known him long enough to know that composed and steady was what he looked like when something was costing him something. She took a breath. "What if I do not want it to be over?" she said. Brandon looked at her carefully. "Jess, I mean it," she said, and her voice came out clear and firm the way it did when she was sure of something. "Not the fake relationship. Not the rules and the photos and the plan. I mean you. What if I want you?" The streetlight caught his eyes, and she saw everything in them that he had apparently been carrying for a very long time. Hope and fear and something deeply patient. Like a man who had been waiting so long, he had almost convinced himself the waiting was permanent. "I have wanted you since I was 22 years old," he said quietly. "I just never believed you would look at me the way I was looking at you." She stepped closer. "I was always looking at you that way. I just did not know how to name it." He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm even in the cold air. "When did you figure it out?" She thought about it honestly, slowly, and then all at once. like most things that matter. He laughed softly at that, and it was the laugh she had known for 12 years. The real one, not the polite one he used at business dinners, or the social one he used in groups. The one that was just his. He lifted her hand and held it between both of his. "I need you to know something," he said. "Everything I said in these past weeks, every moment I was close to you, everything I felt when some other man looked at you, none of that was performance, Jess. Not 1 second of it." She believed him completely. She had believed him the whole time, and that was probably the truest thing about this entire situation. She reached up with her free hand and touched his jaw, and he leaned into it slightly like a man who had been waiting a long time for exactly that. Then she said, "So what do we do now?" He looked at her with those steady brown eyes. "We stop pretending," he said, "and we start being honest. About all of it. No rules this time. No end date. No planned." She smiled. "That sounds terrifying," he smiled back. "Completely. But I would rather be terrified with you than comfortable without you." She kissed him then. Standing on the cold Chicago sidewalk under the streetlight, with the city moving quietly around them. It was not the careful, composed thing she had expected. It was warm and real and unhurried, and it felt like finally arriving. Somewhere she had been traveling toward without a map for a very long time. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers, and they both stood there breathing the cold air and saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. Then from down the block a voice shouted with pure, unbridled joy, "I saw that. I saw the whole thing." They both turned. Owen was standing on the sidewalk 30 feet away, holding a takeout bag he had clearly just picked up from somewhere, his face absolutely radiant with triumph. "Owen," Brandon said, "I am not apologizing." Owen started walking toward them, looking like a man who had won something important. "I have been waiting for this for 4 years. For years, Brandon. I deserve to witness it." He pointed at Jessica. "You're the best thing that ever happened to my brother, and I want that on record." Jessica laughed. "It is on record, Owen." Owen hugged her first and then hugged Brandon, who accepted it with the resigned affection of a man who loved his brother despite everything. Then Owen looked between them with shining eyes and said, "Okay, I am going home now, and I am going to eat this entire bag of food alone in celebration. Do not text me tonight. I am busy being right about everything." He walked away whistling. The weeks that followed were the quietest and most honest weeks Jessica could remember in a long time. Brandon took her to dinner at a small Italian place she had always wanted to try. She took his portrait with her camera one afternoon by the river, and it came out as her favorite photograph she had ever taken. Not because the light was perfect, though it was, but because of the way he was looking at the camera, which was the way he looked at her. Patty Marten. Jessica's mother cried when Jessica told her. Good tears, long and satisfied. The kind a mother cries when something she has hoped for quietly for years finally comes true. She called Brandon directly afterward, and he came to Sunday dinner. Following week, and Patty made roast chicken, and kept touching his arm when she passed him things and calling him sweetheart, in a way that made Brandon look genuinely moved at Harlow's. Gina said nothing dramatic when Jessica told her. She simply nodded once with the deep satisfaction of someone who had called it correctly and knew it. Then she went back to her work and paused and turned around and said, I do deserve some kind of acknowledgement that I was right. You were right, Gina, Jessica said. Gina pointed at her. Remember that Derek Walsh sent one final message 6 weeks after everything began. It was brief, and Jessica read it standing in her kitchen one morning in December. It said simply, I heard about you and Brandon. I hope you are happy. Take care of yourself, Jess. She read it twice, set her phone down, felt nothing except a clean and settled sense of completion. She was happy. Genuinely. Quietly. Solidly happy in the way that does not need to announce itself because it is simply present in everything. She texted Brandon. Derek sent a message. A goodbye one, Brandon replied in seconds. How do you feel? She thought about it standing in her kitchen in the morning light. Good, she typed back. Really good, His reply came with the same steady warmth that was simply who he was. Good. Dinner tonight? I found that bread place you wanted to try. She smiled at her phone. Yes. She put the kettle on and looked out. Her kitchen window at the Chicago winter morning, gray sky and bare trees, and the particular beauty of a city that does not soften itself for anyone. And she thought about the strange and winding way that things find their shape sometimes. How a problem becomes a solution. How a plan becomes something real. How a person can stand beside someone for 12 years and not see clearly what was always there, until the exact right and wrong and complicated moment forces them to look. She thought about Brandon picking her up. That very first night outside the restaurant with a warm coffee in his hand. She thought about how she had always known, somewhere underneath everything, that he would be there. That night over dinner at the bread place, which turned out to be small and warm and perfect. Brandon reached across the table and took her hand the way he had been doing naturally for weeks now. He looked at her and said, "I was thinking about something." She raised an eyebrow. "Should I be concerned?" He smiled. "That agreement we made, the rules and the end date. What about it? I want to make a new agreement." He said, "No rules this time. No end date. Just you and me, honest and permanent. For as long as you will have me." Jessica looked at this man she had known for 12 years and loved without knowing it for most of them and said, That is a very long agreement." "I know." His eyes were warm and sure. "I am counting on it." She squeezed his hand across the table. "Deal," she said. And this time, when she said it, she knew with every part of herself that it was the most real thing she had ever agreed to. Thank you for taking Thed time to listen to this story.